Hello there. Today we're at the Lewis and Clark trailhead. The trail is over there. We're going this way. A-122. That's kind of interesting. There are maybe 30 or 40 of these scattered throughout the woods in this area. All of them have this metal band on it with a different number. I have no idea what they're for. You know, actually, looking around, I would say they're closer to 80 or 90. They're everywhere. We're on one of Dave's trails right now. So many of these cedar posts out here. Dave's trails aren't easy. They're often pretty steep. Last night it rained all night and this morning. So it's going to be a muddy adventure today. Made it. Whew. So I met Dave out here last week for a hike, and he took me to a section of woods I'd never been in before. That's where we are now, and showed me a couple of old home sites I didn't even know were out here. It was really cool. We were all over the place and visited some places I'd been to before along the lower Hamburg road. Made a big loop out of the day, maybe 9 miles total, almost all of it bushwhacking. It was really a blast. Had a good time. We're about to cross through this stretch of pines right here. Shortleaf pine, native to Missouri, but they're definitely planted. They're all in a row, as far as I can see, in both directions, maybe about 20-25 feet in width, and just a row of pines going through the hills. You can tell they were planted quite a long time ago. They're quite large, especially for this type of pine. Well, here we are in early March and we're already getting signs of spring. The Asian honeysuckle, that's an invasive species, is already starting to leaf out. And in fact, they're going to do a prescribed burn out here sometime in the spring. We'll run across some of the fire lanes later in this hike. Also, the daffodils at the home sites are up and the bulbs are starting to pop out. They're not quite in bloom yet, but they're really close. I'm really curious as to why this row of pines was planted out here. Dave did a good job of marking the barbed wire where you cross it. You'll cross barbed wire several times on this hike. Okay, so we're about maybe 3 valleys, possibly 4 valleys in so far on our hike. But just after the first barbed wire fence crossing, you'll see an old roadbed. We're just cutting across it. Goes off in this direction and then directly behind the camera towards Highway 94. Dave said he's explored this and he couldn't find anything along it. I would kind of guess that there are some home sites along here somewhere on this old roadbed, but I really have no idea, and Dave spends quite a bit more time out here exploring than I do, so I definitely trust him on that one. So the government, when they condemned the land, burned and bulldozed all the towns, farms, and homes out here. So it does make it kind of rare to find much, but it's always a treat when we find something out here. Pretty soon we're going to come upon the old McDonald site. That's really neat. Here are a couple of old power poles just laying on the ground out here in the middle of the woods. These are all over the place out here. About 50 feet deeper into the woods behind the first stack is a larger stack of old power poles. So if you're curious to see some of this stuff, you really don't have to go this deep into the woods. At the Lewis and Clark trailhead, go down the trail, not even 100 yards probably, and off to both sides in the woods, right off the trail, you'll find stacks and stacks of old power poles, brackets, insulators. It's really cool. And then as you're going down the trail, if you go off to the right side, you'll find mounds of daffodils all over the place. It looks like maybe a bulldozer had just spread a patch of them all around, and then of course they, multiplied through the years. That's going to be a really pretty place to walk through in about a week from now. Okay, so we're still on the same ridge line that had the power poles on it. They were off to the right of the trail a little bit. Once it leaves out, they're probably going to be hard to find. In fact, almost all of this is going to be hard to find once it leaves out. But Dave's trail continues on this direction, just over my left shoulder. And you can see a bit of a path that Dave made here to my right, and it's flagged farther down. This is going to take us to the McDonald home site. So we're going to go down, check that out. It's probably one of the largest home sites, farms, that I've seen out here as far as outbuildings go. I believe there was a home and 3 or 4 outbuildings that went with that. Then we'll come back up and follow Dave's trail. Just at the beginning of the path to the McDonald site, you'll see the pink and yellow, and then hopefully it shows up on camera, a path of yellow kind of dipping down and then back up on the ridge line. The main trail is behind the camera. The first structure we come to is the brooder house. It was a large L-shaped building with drainage in it, and Daniel McDonald ran 20,000 birds in this brooder house. Just on top of the ground, outside of the foundation of the brooder house, are several pieces of the drain pipe. You can see it's quite large. This would have been a fitting. Quite a few pieces all around on the ground here. You can see the foundation was concrete. Here's what's left of a cistern or drainage area from inside the building. Let's go take a closer look. It's really hard to say. It's all filled in, collapsed. Just behind the L corner, we have what looks like an old well pipe with concrete pad for the pump. Then behind that we have some pieces of a chimney broken up on the ground. Here we have some of the foundation on the L side running towards the house. This was large, maybe a couple of 250 feet in each direction. 20,000 chickens, that's a lot of birds. Just over to my right is the far corner for the brooder house. We'll head out to the house in just a minute. I wanted to let you know that they had 40 acres, their business obviously, their home, their other outbuildings. That's their livelihood here. And in 1940, the government offered most people money for their places, not even close to the fair market value of what it was. McDonald's were offered $12,000, and apparently they didn't take it because the property was condemned in 1941 for, I believe, $864. But what may have happened to the McDonald's, which is what happened to most people out here, is once the government condemned the properties, then they took all of this to court and said that they were offering too much money on the properties in a condemned state, and the court ruled in their favor, and they actually didn't pay out any of that to most of the people. So most of the people just lost everything they owned with nothing in return, and they had 30 days to abandon their properties. It makes me angry every time I consider it, to be honest with you, but it's a piece of this country's history. Yuccas. That's how you know we're close to the home. Here's what remains of the foundation of the home. Not a lot, it's mostly collapsed in. Off to the side we still have some old fence posts. some concrete. And here's the cistern. There's quite a bit of water in it, and something dead as well. It's well built. I forgot to mention that the McDonald's sold their chickens to the Golden Fried Chicken Loaf restaurant on Del Mar, downtown St. Louis at the time. So this foundation is a little bit small, and I'm thinking, like most homes of that era, that it wasn't a full basement. It was more of a cellar, just kind of, you know, for food storage, those types of things. And the rest of it would have been built just on the ground. So we're going to go ahead and head back to Dave's Trail onto the next home site. So there's a really good website for information about everything that can be found in this area. It's got plat maps and some information about some of the families that lived here at the time, and of course the story. It's called the TNT Story, and I'll put a link to it in the description below this video. I remember this valley. We're about to go steeply down and then even more steeply up the other side. Dave usually leaves saplings at strategic locations to grab onto as you're going up and down these hills. Look for those. It helps a lot. Why make switchbacks or cut up the hill at an angle when you can save steps by just going straight? Okay, so the other end of the trail pops out on the side of 94 across from the Hamburg Trail trailhead parking. We're going to go ahead and walk through this grass, skirt the woods for a little bit, and then Dave has an area cut in and flagged to get to the Gerdeman home site. We'll take a look at that. Okay, so my memory's fuzzy on this one. This is the Gerdeman or the Glatz home site. I believe it's Gerdeman though. You won't find this easily. Dave has this one flag here, which is pretty far off from the road in the woods. You just kind of have to look for what looks like a place people have walked on, mashed down the leaves. There is this pipe coming up out of the ground, and that's about it really that I could find in this area. I'm going to poke around, and if I don't see anything else, we're going to head over to the old railroad beds. So we're currently walking along where the old train tracks were. The rails were pulled, and most of the ties were just tossed down in the gullies just off to the side. They graded this area to elevate the railroad bed up above the surrounding landscape. And now that we're done with Dave's trail, we're going to start that loop hike and go by a lot of sites that I've had in previous videos from a year or maybe more ago. But I want to hit the highlights of this. This whole loop, I really don't know how. I'm not going to do the whole loop that Dave and I did, so I figure mine's going to be around 6 miles, roughly, maybe 7. But there's so much to see, and it really makes for a fun hike. So let's go ahead and head down these old railroad tracks and see what we find. They cut into the hill in this area just to keep the tracks level. So this is probably going to be my last bushwhack of the winter. I was out here 5 days ago with Dave, and nothing was in leaf, and now quite a bit is, just in 5 days. Once everything comes out in leaf, it's difficult to find anything out in the woods. So that's what winter times are for. I love bushwhacking in the winter. Okay, we're coming to the last hill that the railroad cut through. just before the lower Hamburg Road. And they flagged these, which is nice. I wouldn't count on these being here, but you'll know if you hit the lower Hamburg Road, just backtrack a quarter mile, half mile. And you've got the, let's see, I believe it's the Sudbrock homestead over here at the top of this hill, and the Mallow homestead over here at the top of this hill. And these were both in my video from a year or more ago called Exploring the Lower Hamburg Road, which we're going to incorporate that as part of our loop hike today as we head down towards the Katy Trail and the Missouri River. Let's go take a look at these two. Now, as we approach the Sudbrock homestead, a couple of daffodils are in bloom. They're quite pretty. Just think, that would have been more than 84 years ago. And just past the daffodils look like the front steps into the house, some brick and concrete, and the cellar or basement behind us. Let's go take a closer look. Yeah, there's not much left here. It was quite small, so a cellar. You can see bits of the concrete foundation with brick in it. Off to the left of the house we have the cistern. Quite a bit of water in there too. Okay, up the other hill for the Mallow site. On your way to the old Mallow site, you'll see what was obviously an old roadbed. This is the original Lower Hamburg Road. The government is the one that built the one that does a straight shot from 94 down to the what was the NKT Railroad at the time, the Katy Trail now by the Missouri. But this does kind of a half circle, goes right by the Hamburg town dump, and then back up to 94. When these daffodils are in bloom, it makes finding these old home sites very easy this time of year. It's amazing to think these are probably well over 100 years old, and they've just spread throughout the woods. You can see they continue quite a bit of ways that way. We have some yucca and more daffodils over here, and I could see the foundation of the Mallow home over there. Let's go take a closer look. Here you can see what's left of some old concrete foundation, what's left of the cellar or basement over here. It's collapsed in quite a bit. The old front steps for what would have been the porch over there with the daffodils and the yuccas. So definitely that was the front of the house. Lots of yuccas over there. More daffodils. And I know there is a retention pond around here because I found this the first time when the spring peepers were out and they led me up the hill to this place. Let's poke around a bit. Here's another patch of daffodils. I love these flowers. More daffodils. That old Hamburg Road, the original one, is within sight. 100 feet maybe. Wow, and look at these yuccas. There's quite a bit of them. More daffodils behind the yuccas. We're almost to the pond. Here's the pond, really, really low. We definitely need some more rain out here. Okay, we're coming up on the Lower Hamburg Road, the later one that the government built, and we'll cross it and stick on the railroad bed to the other end, and just past the other end it ends at 94. It's supposed to be a cistern for, I believe, the Gatz homestead, which Dave and I didn't look for, but he said that was up to me to find that one. So let's see if we can. You never know what you find out in the woods. There are railroad ties all along this stretch. Okay, end of the railroad bed. We have Highway 94, then the Hamburg Trail on the other side of that. All I have to follow from what Dave told me is that the cistern is somewhere over here. It's not much to go on, but I do see a couple of patches of daffodils off in the distance, and that's a good clue, so we'll head that way. Okay, this is a real good clue. Close to the road we have these daffodils. More daffodils and yuccas just here in the woods. That's where we're headed. Here at the edge of the woods you can see the daffodils and maybe a dozen yuccas or more going back into the woods. Look at all these yuccas everywhere. Definitely was a house here at one time. Man, I should always carry a big set of pruners when I'm bushwhacking. Could definitely use them now. It's been tough getting back in here. Well, all the landscape plants were up by the road, and there's nothing deeper in the woods. So if I'm going to find anything, it's really going to be right there at the edge of the road. This may be what remains of the cistern that Dave referenced. I doubt it, though. It just looks like a hole in the ground. But there's some rock and stuff in there, so this is all I can really find out here. Let's head back towards the lower Hamburg Road. Hope this shows up on camera. Heading back towards the old railroad bed. Directly ahead in the middle of the screen is another large patch of daffodils. Definitely there was a home or were homes back in this area at one time. It's just too dense to get through. Got to bring those pruners from now on. Well, we're on the lower Hamburg Road now. You can tell by all the trash on both sides of it. It's just everywhere. Here's where the original lower Hamburg Road terminates. Well, it actually did go down a ways and then continue past the Hamburg dump and back up. I'm sorry. But the Mallow home site was up this direction. The road wound through the tops of the hills, came down off the ridge here, went down this way, and then branched off again where the dump is. Here you can see the grade for the remainder of the old Hamburg Road. It actually terminated in two spots here on this road. This one is opposite the Jan Dam, which is down here in the valley. Here you can see the Jan Dam from the uphill side of the valley. This is actually the spillway for the dam. They never did finish construction of the dam itself. Pretty cool. It's pretty crumbly. I walked up to the top of that one time. Once is enough. So after coming down the hill a bit, this is where the original lower Hamburg Road veered off, kind of went down across and bridged this valley. There's a gorgeous culvert there at the bottom of that. And that's where the Hamburg dump is as well. And then it curved around and came up out at the end of the railroad tracks in 94, right in that area would be the end of this road. Let's go find that Hamburg dump, or at least the culvert. There's not much to the dump anymore. Okay, so this is the elevated section for the road to get across the valley. The culvert pipe is just behind us on both sides. The dump, well, there's bits of trash all around here, but most of the dump is over here on the other side of the creek. Let's go check out this culvert. So I was here last year. I need to put a link to that lower Hamburg Road video I did a year or more ago, and all of this stuff pretty much from the lower Hamburg Road section on was in that video. But we're gonna go down through the dump. It's the easier way to get to the creek bed. Somebody in the last year though has been out here digging around a lot. They've uncovered a lot of the trash and just dug up a lot of dirt. So I'll kind of show you that on our way down this hill. This is the road, this level area at the top. We have just a huge mound of clay pipe. It's all broken up. And some concrete. Here we have some pipe, a bunch of broken glass, and some broken insulators. I'll just kind of pan around here. Just little piles of junk all over the place. A lot of buckets, bottles, pots and pans. I like that tea kettle. There's a big tub of broken bottles. I'm sure there are a few treasures in here. Still. Here's that culvert. This is the Heck Roth Cemetery. They've got a new sign. Now it's just the Roth Cemetery. I'm not sure. But there's a gravestone here for a trumpeter from the Civil War. It's right on the old Hamburg Road. So just down the road past the cemetery on the left is the remains of the old Beatty home site. Directly across the road from the cemetery are what remains of the old Daniel home site. Very little, a few chunks of concrete scattered around, and that's it. The Daniel home site did have a few daffodils. They're just coming up. And as you continue down the road to the quarry, on the left you would have the Edwards home site and the Bushwhack Brewing Company off to the right. I can't find remains from either one of those though. Okay, so I'd originally planned to take you to the top of the quarry back here. It's beautiful. You can see the entire quarry, lake, and then the Missouri River just on the other side of the Katy Trail. I'm out of daylight. I'm only at the halfway point in this hike, and I've got 2 hours left of daylight. So we'll do this in another video, but I want to give you an idea of what it's like to get there in case you decide to do this for yourself. Alright, from this rock jut out, go back up the bank just a bit, and there's a path that follows the edge of the lake over to this little finger area, and you kind of have to cross that. There are a lot of down trees there, so it's not hard to get across. It's kind of swampy. And you can see on the hillside a dirt path going steeply up the hill. There is a rope with knots in it, and use that to get yourself up and down that hill. That's really the only way you're going to do it. It's pretty steep. Then you'll there's a path up there, you kind of skirt along the edge, back down into this other finger area of the quarry and around, all the way up to the peak up here. And when you're at the peak, there's somebody built a little camp up there, you know, some walls, some tarps, and a fire ring, the usual stuff for a camp, and a wooden bench out of cedar, which is right on the edge of that little dirt landslide area that goes down into the quarry. It's a little sketchy, but when you sit there, it's just a great place to relax and enjoy the view. So if you decide to do this one, be safe. One thing I forgot to mention about getting up there at the top of the quarry is if you're afraid of heights, don't do it. When you're on that little path at the top, you're walking along the edge most of the path, and it's a straight drop down, a long one too. So like I said, if you're afraid of heights, you're not going to make it. I wouldn't even try. But it is kind of fun. So we're currently on the Katy Trail. The old NKT Railroad is a Rails to Trails project. It's really a cool trail. Mostly bikes, but you see some runners out here too. We're going to take this a ways, I'm not sure, but it's a ways, till we get to the area where the Lewis and Clark Trail is. We're going to hop off the Katy Trail into the bottom of a valley, and that's where the Pitman Cemetery is. And we'll see that real quick. And there's a home site there too. I forgot the name of the people that live there, but I could find that out. And then we'll go up the hill from there. It's a pretty steep climb. Get on the Lewis and Clark Trail to head back to the car. Well, here's where the Lewis and Clark expedition spent their second night at the mouth of this creek in the Missouri River. A lot of history here, it's cool. There's the first set of bluffs you come to if you go counterclockwise on the Lewis and Clark Trail. Here's the next set of bluffs on the Lewis and Clark Trail. They're much higher than the previous ones. We're going to cut into this valley and find the Pitman Cemetery and what remains of the Caladry home site. Here you can see where the Department of Conservation has cleared the perimeter for the burn, a prescribed burn they plan to do this spring. Should be a few thousand acres in that burn. Here we have a clump of daffodils and another larger clump of daffodils behind us. That's how we know we're close to the home site. Alright, and we have the Pitman Cemetery. There's just one person buried here with a headstone and a footstone. I did find out last year I was laughing at the tube socks on the corner post, and they were pretty new last winter, but Dave's the one that put those up there so that he could find it again, and it does make it stand out in the woods. It's hilarious. Let's find that Caladry home site. This is probably hard to tell, but here's some concrete foundation. Here's the corner, goes up this direction. This is a small home, and then off to our left. Here you can see some more of that concrete foundation on the other side. Boy, I cleared out over a dozen spider webs just getting back here. I didn't expect that this early in the year. I'm just like my face and head are covered. Here's the cistern for the Caladry home site. Looks like there's some water down there. Man, I am absolutely covered in spider webs. So, we're following this old fence line and this clearing for the burn. We're going to take this up the hill. This part doesn't look that steep, but as we get towards the top of the bluff, that's one of the steepest climbs I've ever done. And then we're going to take a look at one of the bluff views over the Missouri River. Probably take the old fire road back. And just before we get to the trailhead, I want to check out those sections of daffodils and down are just piles of old power poles. And hopefully they're in bloom. The ones down here in the valley bottom are not yet, but that's to be expected. It's colder down here than it is up at the top. And hopefully those are in bloom, since we did see some earlier today that were along the ridge lines. Here we go. We came from way down there, and we still got to go way up there. And it cracks me up that in the 40s, the government thought they needed to fence this slope. Almost at the top. It's beautiful. Yeah. How's this for a view? Worth every step. One more bluff view before we head away from the river. I love these overcast days. The shad bush is beginning to bloom. Always one of our first early bloomers. Man, it's so peaceful and quiet on this old road. It's one of those moments you really don't ever want to end. It's beautiful. I'm not certain if the white flowers on the shad bush are going to show through against this really overcast sky. The colors are too similar. That's really a tall shad bush tree though. One of our early bloomers, which means that the witch hazel has already bloomed. There are quite a few of those in Hawn. The snowdrops have already bloomed. You can see a big patch of those up by the Scott Cemetery. We know the daffodils are just beginning, and they're just kind of at all the old home sites. And along the Lewis and Clark Trail are some wild purple hyacinth, which are going to be about to bloom. Which means the azaleas and the dogwoods and redbuds aren't far behind. I love this time of year. So, I've been racking my brain trying to remember the family name for this home site that's just off the fire road. It eludes me. But what's funny is I was here just a few weeks ago, so if you saw the bushwhacking, the Lewis and Clark Trails video, I had it in that. Let's take a quick look. Okay, so here we have the cistern. There's a bit of water in it this time. The old well pump on the ground by the cistern. The collapsed chimney and foundation for the house. Whoa! Sorry, Mr. Rabbit. Ooh, I don't know who scared who more. You know, if you want a little solitude on these busier trails, go out on a bad weather day. Works every time. Well, we're fairly close to the trailhead now, and there are daffodils and yuccas all over the place in the woods on both sides of the trail, which makes me think quite a few people lived in this area at one time. I've never found remains of anything though. Straight back I could see one of the piles of power poles. Let's take a look real quick. Here you can see one of the supports for a cable for a power pole sticking up out of the ground. There are a couple back in there. Just a big old pile of power poles with brackets and things on them. More daffodils in the background. There are stacks of power poles on both sides of the trail close to the trailhead. Dozens of them. You know, that was a lot for a short hike. 6 or 7 miles, roughly. A lot of history out there. The only thing I really missed I wanted to get was that quarry. Ends up I would have had enough daylight to have gotten it, but well, we'll do that for another time, right? So we're almost to the trailhead. I'd say it's time to end the video. Thanks for coming along. Hope you enjoyed our adventure together. See you next week. Bye-bye.